I'm always so excited to highlight the quality of African medicinal cannabis. And in today's facility overview of Wellness Choice, we can have a look at their cultivation and processing strategy, discuss the challenges and lessons learned along the way, and additionally look where their medicinal cannabis is planning to tie into the global supply chain. Now, if you're passionate about knowing more about African medicinal cannabis, that's definitely something I love unpacking and going through a journey on this channel. So join me and subscribe, and be sure to stay right till the end where we'll be actually going through a full facility video. Hi everyone, today we've got on Jenna and Gilbert Richmond from Wellness Choice, which is a SAHPRA accredited Section 22C 1B licensed facility. Now, Jenna, I'm going to go straight to you with a question in terms of give us an overview of the journey and feel free to introduce yourselves.
Thank you, Jeff. And yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us, firstly, Jeff. What you're doing in your platform, we are very inspired by. So yeah, thank you for inviting us today and having us on the platform. I believe very strongly that any industry that's in its infancy should have a lot of research and education around it. So these sorts of platforms where entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs such as ourselves can be a part of is very vital. So yeah, thank you for that. Then just to touch on Wellness Choice and who we are and a little bit of background. I think it was May 2019, the ideation phase began. I myself come from an extensive investment banking and financial services background. Gilbert comes from a corporate and more commercial property background. So being in corporate for quite an extensive time, we both looked at ways in which we could streamline and effectively create more efficiencies and diversify our current agricultural operations. So with that being said, we did a lot of research, extensive research. We did a lot of networking, and we came to the conclusion that entering this medical cannabis industry, and specifically in its infancy, could prove to be quite a sustainable business model. So we then began, I think, construction in August 2020. Thereafter, we were fully inspected in October 2021 by the regulators being SAHPRA, and we successfully got our license this year, Feb 2022.
Well, congratulations. So, well done.
Thank you. So yeah, it's been quite an extensive journey, quite a long journey. And we have very recently now in July concluded our first ever successful harvest. So we're awaiting our certificates of analysis, which should come in the next week.
Awesome. Well, this is exciting, and thank you for coming on today, because this is what we need in the industry. Companies that do a professional job, that invest in the facilities to unpack how the industry is, the challenges, what's working. And today we want to go through some of that journey. So in this regard, Gilbert, I mean, in the intro video, we saw obviously a decision to go with greenhouses, controlled environments for cultivation, but you also then move that into a very controlled packing environment. Tell us about the greenhouse choice, why you went with that, and then certain methods you're using to get good control. I saw some wet balls in there. Take us through that decision.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Firstly, thank you very much for having us on today. It's a great privilege, and like Jen said, through our construction phase, we really used your videos as reference and your channel. So it's
awesome.
Great that we could have come full circle and be on here today. On your question about the greenhouse, so we in the planning phase now, you choose, are you indoor or you greenhouse, and due to the competitive advantages that we saw in our area, being the clean air, And through a desktop study, saw that we've got over 300 sunshine days in a year. We thought that the greenhouse is definitely the way to go, and it goes with our ethos of being sustainable, environmentally friendly. And that being said, we're looking into hydro and solar power solutions and utilizing the sun in our cultivation. In terms of controls, we invested in an advanced environmental control system that allows us to heat, cool, humidify, dehumidify, as well as a system linking to the light deprivation systems. So that way we can monitor and have an environment as stable as possible to continuously put out high quality output throughout the year.
Awesome. And I mean, that's critical because at the end of the day, we are looking to target medicinal products, which means the ability to control the cultivation conditions, and making use of the natural sun is kind of the ideal point to be, because you don't want to have over-intensive investment in energy costs. And considering we are in Africa, to grow in a way that's very much Canadian, there is benefit surely to indoor cultivation, but it's also good to see cultivators doing controlled greenhouse utilization. Now, in terms of how you're currently looking at growing out your genetics, can you maybe describe the decision? Obviously, I assume there was seeds initially, and then you're going towards maybe mudders or clones. Take us through that cultivation process, and then also I'm sure maybe you have an idea of what you're expecting in terms of the genetics. Maybe there were some provisional COAs. For those who don't know, that's a certificate of analysis. Take us through that growing out process.
So for the genetics, Jeff, we are using a company called Mother Labs. They are quite reputable and well-renowned. We have our mother plants sitting in the vegging greenhouse, after which we take clones and then obviously pay royalties thereof. So currently we're looking at building up a system where we can take clones, then we can create a model whereby we're having a system of a monthly harvest. So Gil will touch on that a little bit just now. I know we want to look at the cultivation and how we're creating efficiencies and what that looks like. So that monthly harvest is our strategy, and we strongly believe that before you look at growing your cultivation in terms of expansion, your current facility needs to be as efficient as possible. So that's where we're looking at in terms of that. In terms of certificates of analysis, on the current crop in question, we have got COAs back, or premature COAs back, if I can put it that way. We speed dried some flour for those tests. So we are currently sitting on 23% THC. And now that we've completed the full drying and curing phase, we are now awaiting the full COA. So that's where we are now, and that should be within the next week. And then just with regards to our strategy going forward, diversification in this industry, I think, is what puts players such as ourselves apart. It's a highly regulated industry, highly standardized industry. So I think where we can make a difference and where we can be wellness choice different to any other facility is going to be in our genetics. So we have quite an extensive short to medium term plan around our genetics and how we wish to achieve that. And we'd look to import different seedlings and look at which strain and which genetic works specifically well to our climate and our environment. So that is, it's a subsidiary or a separate leg to the business, which we extensively looking at. And I think genetics, it's the big G that everyone talks about. That's very important to focus on. So that's going to be our short to medium term focus.
No, awesome. Well, I mean, it's great that you're already on the first one with accelerated drying, that you're already hitting 23%. So that's exactly it. And it's about optimizing, tweaking, so that you get to a point where you're happy and, buyers, off-takers are happy as well. And then you try to lock in on, that stability for that strain. Try to make sure that it's, readily accepted, readily recognized by a medical patient. And that's becoming the kind of like go-to wellness choice as the brand that a patient obviously wants to see repeatedly. Now, I know that when I initially heard you guys were out in KZN, first thing that came to mind was like, oh my word, what about the humidity? That can be challenging, especially even in a greenhouse environment. Even if it is regulated, it's tough. But I know after speaking to Gilbert at the previous expos as well, like, where are you in terms of that? You took a lot of consideration into the site, its position and its altitude. Can you take us through that, Gilbert, in terms of, like, even though you are in KZN, you've given it quite a bit of consideration from the site selection?
Yes, no, thanks, Jeff. So obviously being in KZN, down at the coast, you obviously, that comes synonymous with high humidities, daytime and nighttime, warm temperatures. So it can be challenging to cultivate medical cannabis in those conditions. So during our site scoping environmental analysis stage, we looked at a couple of key factors, being the clean air. So, we have colleagues and friends who put up a facility right next door to a cement factory, and it's really caused them, great issues going, wet walls clogging up and solidifying because of the cement dust, all of that. Clean air, clean and reliable water source, which was a key thing that we looked at. And the property we're currently cultivating on is licensed for 660,000 cubes per annum of water. So, we don't foresee over or running out of water. A reliable power supply was also very key, with load shedding being, being a great issue. So we found a competitive advantage there for the area we are.
So I'm going to jump in there for anyone internationally looking in. I mean, load shedding is essentially the scenario in South Africa where we do have intermittent power blackouts. So it's really important that a lot of the professional cultivators look at supplemental lighting options, especially if you're relying on that or you're blacking out. You need to have capacity or plan around reserve power in the region, which just adds to the stability of, the foreignness of what African cultivators go through. We have fantastic sun, but in those critical environments where we do have maybe sometimes a destabilized power grid, it's not that often, but it does happen. It's important to look at that from an investment standpoint, look at planning for the, be as much off grid as possible and go to renewable power sources as much as possible. But back to you, Gilbert.
Great. No, thanks. So the site that we ended up settling on is about 200 k's inland from the coast, inland from Durban or the closest coastal region, and we situated 1,300 meters elevation, which has then provided us relatively low humidity conditions, which for us has been greatly favorable in terms of, now that we're in the cultivation phase of the project. If we were suffering with 90% humidity during the day and 100% humidity at night, our electrical bill would have been through the roof, with massive dehumidifiers needed to get the greenhouses down to the optimal cultivation conditions. So yeah, that's what we went through. And also a great consideration that we went through looking at the various sites that we looked at was the community in that area, because being a labor-intensive business, we wanted to know that the area we're going into is a stable community whereby values and morals are upheld, where we have found in this, where we are currently situated. And the staff, like you'll see in the video, are like family to us, and there are a lot of people really hungry for jobs in this area. We didn't put out any adverts, any news anywhere, and we received over 250 CVs of just people maybe hearing from the contractors that there may be jobs around. So for us to be able to create jobs in this remote part of KZN is a great, extra bit of energy when you're waking up in the morning to know that you're making a difference in other people's lives.
Awesome, excellent. And I mean, this is the definition. I also see that in the future, consumers are going to be paying with the consideration of social impacts in that branding. And absolutely, it's fantastic that you're creating that many jobs in such a remote location. And also that remoteness gives you some good advantages from pest control, consideration, clean water, like you mentioned, and you're very close to support supply from power utilities. So glad about that. I mean, we want to go back around to the cultivation and the degree of throughput. I know Jenna mentioned earlier that you have a designated greenhouses for, getting your genetics hardened off initially, and then you've got, I believe, 2 flowering greenhouses. Can you take us through? Are you doing a crop rotation on the monthly? Take us through some of that, Gilbert.
Great. No, thanks, Jeff. So the current system we've got is that in terms of staggering, we stagger at 30-day intervals, just so that we can build efficiencies and for us to actually know exactly we can achieve this before. Maybe some of the facilities have cut that down to 2 weeks. So we take the clone cuttings in our processing area. There's a separate part of the processing area under the HVAC utility where they spend 30 days there, 2 weeks or 14 days of rooting under the clone domes. They then move on to under grow lights in 10 by 10 centimeter pots for another 2 weeks up until you get to about 30 days. From there, they move into the veg greenhouse for 30 days. When ready, or after 30 days, they then move across into one of the flowering greenhouses. And there's 2 of those as mentioned. So at any one time, you've got clones between 0 to 30 days in your cloning area, vegging plants between 0 and 30 days in your vegging greenhouse, and then you've got 2 flowering greenhouses where the current strain we're growing is an 8-week flowering strain. So you can alternate your harvest monthly between the 2, and that 30-day staggering gives the primary processing side of the business 30 days to dry, to trim, to cure, and to get out before the next batch comes in. And yeah, that's a system that we're going into.
Yeah, awesome. And I mean, the one thing I saw as well, which was really impressive, I mean, you know, often you can see a lot, you can tell a lot from the greenhouses, but the post-processing in terms of, you know, that GMP ready type facility, I mean, the finishers looked really tight. You know, a lot of the consideration went to material air hatches, you know, in terms of passing through materials, you know, the right PPE considerations, the right GMP type of flows. You know, in terms of that consideration, and I know you mentioned HVAC, which obviously refers to the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning in the facility. And that's good to see, you know, designated air handling units, not just air cons, you know, non-GMP compliant considerations. And then I mentioned GACP, so good agricultural and collection practices, moving to GMP, which is good manufacturing practices, which is often the standard for definitely for any pharmaceutical. But if, for instance, there's a pivoting towards consumer dietary supplement, there's also GMP standards for food and dietary in the States. So, you know, there are these standards that are applied. And I was impressed with the finishes of the processing facility. Can you take us through, you know, like what are some of those considerations? A lot of people are willing to dry under non-controlled conditions. You obviously are opting for drying under very controlled conditions. You know, what were some of the benefits and why did you go that way?
Great. So I'll just to touch on that. So one of the primary reasons is for us to we've now done all the hard work, we've cultivated under controlled conditions, and now to have a external threat or an external infection or bacteria coming into our crop at this late stage, you know, for us would be seen as really dropping the ball at the last minute. So the HVAC system, it goes through about give or take 8 air changes an hour, going through a primary, then secondary, and then a HEPA filter, scrubbing the air completely. We've also then designed it in such a way that there's pressure gradients flowing away from the primary processing area, as well as a man and a material airlock. The airlock being the materials move through just there, only materials move through the material airlock, and only human beings move through the man airlock. We've also taken extra measures in terms of PPE with full hazmat suits, any staff going into that area. And with this area being controlled, where we can control temperature, humidity, and obviously the cleanliness of the air, we can then control how long we want to dry for, and determined on how big the buds are. So the bigger, and we maybe see a risk of bud rot or anything like that, we can dry them slightly faster, smaller buds slightly longer. So that's kind of some of the considerations we went through to go to this level, and this, some may say, extreme level of cleanliness and controls to make sure we don't have any issues in the primary processing area.
Yeah, I mean, essentially you're de-risking the process. And I mean, I often see this as well, where the focus is on testing, final release testing, but people overlook the fact that, you know, you've got an entire crop and you're only testing a fraction of a % of that crop. And risk can be exposed at any point. So, you know, when often mature buyers look at acquisition of product, they've got to look at the fact that what is the QMS, the quality management systems around that, the controls around the facility, because, you know, a test tells you a fraction of the actual reality. So to de-risk the potential recall, you know, at any point, one of those products that are your final product could have a contamination risk. And if that's what the regulator picks up, you get a product recall, your entire reputation goes down the toilet with that, and that's a massive risk. So to see that consideration going to the facility, this is also something that always needs to be highlighted is, yes, a test is instructive, but a test is only a fraction that can demonstrate almost a correlation of quality being applied throughout the process. And I think you guys are really aware of that and focus on that, so it's great to see. Now, back to Jenna. I mean, I would like to find out, because you know, we know that obviously with the States, it's a bit restrictive in terms of exports at the moment. We know that Canada has a bit of a protectionist policy around, we know what Aurora, Tilray, Canopy has done in that region with overproduction. And, you know, I'm curious to know, where are you guys looking to go in terms of what markets are the most interesting in terms of maybe the offtakes and the supply channels? Maybe let's talk a bit about the business and the transactional side of the cannabis post-harvest. as you guys are now, getting into this routine of starting to put out product?
Yeah. So I think this is an extensive question, Jeff, and definitely top of mind for, I think, any cultivator, and specifically when you're at the phase of you've got finished product, it's in a saleable condition, it's high quality, and your COAs are coming back really favorable. So at this stage, we're in quite extensive negotiations and discussions with various offtake opportunities, and into a number of different territories. And these include, but definitely not limited to, the likes of Australia, Israel, Germany. But with us currently being GACP accredited and licensed, we do have that long-term strategy to become GMP, and more in the medium term to look at the CUMCS accreditation. So for us, those are the markets we're currently looking at. But however, we are a South African cultivator at the end of the day. I myself very passionate about South Africa and, investment opportunities and public-private partnerships. So looking into local offtakes would be, an ideal and key avenue for us, and specifically to other license holders and to other extraction facilities. So those are different avenues which I believe could definitely drive the economic restoration and growth in the country. So yeah, we're looking all around at this current stage, and we're definitely looking at the likes of CUMCS accreditation and in the long term at GMP. Is there anything I've missed?
There's also, just to add to that, Jeff, we're also looking at the Section 21, people who are accredited with Section 21, as well as other South African-based licensed cultivators or extraction facilities, where you can sell through to them, they then extract and fulfill their offtake. So for us, there's a number of different opportunities where we're not at this stage limited to export, which we found as a positive.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned CUMCS accreditation, so that's control union certification, and the idea there is Israel has got this often a mandate. There's a debate about whether it should be a mandate or not, but we won't get into the technicals there. But essentially, control union certification is a requirement going into Israel at the moment with discussion. There are some maybe workarounds, but for the most part, 95% is going for control union. And the key there is, just adds to the GACP accreditation level. And I agree with you. Like locally, we see a model called Section 21, where you go through an approval to patients through SAHPRA. I've done some interviews on that topic, so it'll be on the video as well if you're interested in Section 21. That patient base is building. And ideally, we would see that continue to build, and it will, based on any international market with medical access. Ideally, we would also see, at some point, everyone's heavily eyeing Germany and the expert panels that are coming together to, structure a commercial framework for responsible adult use. Now, I can definitely see that same opportunity taking place in South Africa, but what we need is some political will from government to say, well, we want to enable responsible adult use domestically, and to do that, we've got to consider, the international laws, how it works with the UN Convention and the INCB, the International Narcotic Control Board. But if that is decided that we go ahead, what better place would there be but to go to the approved cultivators, because there's already controls in place to supply into that responsible adult use market, and then you can look at methods for inclusion. There's once you've got a mature market, you can find inclusion and you can work on dispensaries being inclusive and responsible sourcing, and you guys already have a responsible sourcing background in terms of job creation and looking to bolster the local community. So on that front as well, there's a lot we've covered today, and I hope it's been really informative to everyone watching. But Jenna and Gilbert, maybe for this question, what are some of the biggest lessons and insights learned? I see it all the time. I'm exposed to a lot of cultivators, even extractors and testing labs. Like, what do you guys pick up in the it's not just I've got land and I can just go do this. What were some of the insights? Because there are going to be people watching this that are very inspired, that want to get into the space, or maybe they're already active in the space. What are some of the insights, just to give back to the community out there? Like, what are insights you've learned in the journey?
Cool. So I'll start off, and then just on the actual cultivation side and choosing your site. So if you're watching and you at the planning phase and due diligence phase, looking to get into the industry, we, from an agricultural background as a family, which you'll see in the video a bit later on, when you want to get into any agricultural space, whether it be citrus, macadamia nuts, sugarcane, you name it, you're doing extensive due diligence on that area, on the climate, on hot and min and max temperatures, winter, summer, your frost, your humidity, especially for cannabis being the most key, and then make an informed decision that this area is in fact correct for cultivating cannabis, where a lot of people have overlooked this, as well as all the other things, stable power supply. If you subject it to stage 6 load shedding, which for those outside of South Africa, that's a 13-hour rolling blackout where you don't have power for 13 hours. And to run a generator of 20 to 30 liters an hour, you're really going to run into some financial problems, and your balance sheet and your financials are going to start not making sense with that kind of diesel expenditure. And Jen would carry on the business front.
Yeah, so Jeff, I think key learnings and some takeaways. It's obviously been an extensive 3-year journey for us since June 2019, and I feel back then there was very little information on specification requirements, facility flow, security specs, anything from fencing requirements all the way into the deeper ends of your quality assurance. And obviously with Section 22C, which is the license to cultivate, import, export, distribute and manufacture medicinal cannabis, it, as I mentioned earlier, obviously very highly regulated. So there were a bunch of tick boxes that one has to achieve, and through that, the likes of consultancies to help us with our standard operating procedures, our quality assurance model, getting all of that back then in the infancy was quite challenging, especially being A, new to medicinal cannabis, and B, the industry being quite fresh in the country. So I think, a lot of key learnings around that. You've got to get the right suppliers on board who know what they're doing to ensure that you've got a quality facility that meets the requirements of SAHPRA, but not just that. You've got to think long term. And like we discussed around offtake earlier, you've got to think, what would the end user require in terms of facility flow, security, quality assurance, and quality control. So, I mean, this touches on the need for ESG financing and looking into the ethical and the social side of your business, and not just the physicality of it. So a lot of key learnings around that. We're looking daily into how we can improve our facility to make it more cost effective, look at the management accounts, look at the cost accounting, and more so look at efficiencies on flow. So we feel that is just something to note for anybody that is looking to get into the industry. And I think a lot of key learnings over the time, and it's an extensive journey with lots of lessons, and definitely at the end, if you persevere, it is one in an industry worth getting into.
Awesome. And just to touch on what Jeff, what Jen said about consultants and getting into it. So 3 years ago, we found it very difficult to find anyone who could tell us, how high must your fence be? Does it need to be electrified? There's a double fence you see in the SAHPRA guideline, but how far apart must it be? CCTV cameras, can there be blind spots in your product? Can't there be? Your quality management system, all of these things that you would not be able to do that without a consultant. So I strongly suggest, or I strongly advise, going towards employing a consultant for all of this. And now 3 years later, I'm sure any consultant worth their salt will definitely be able to give you a facility design, a facility of staff, product, flow, and all of that. And another tip, what we learned, and we may have learned this the hard way once or twice, is that to always go with a 3-quote strategy when dealing with suppliers, because the moment people hear cannabis, they think it's these people who've got a 50 million rand budget and we can just charge them 1.5 times, 2 times the usual price for whatever you're looking to procure. So that's one of the things where we did learn once or twice the hard way.
And I think on the education side as well, Jeff, there was weeks of long hours to prepare for those regulatory authorities to inspect the facility. So, at that stage, it's not up to a consultant to prove your concept and your facility, but rather yourself. So be very invested in the knowledge of your facility, and be prepared for when SAHPRA do inspect you, because it's a rigorous process, and it requires a lot of determination and a lot of knowledge. So when you get to that stage, ensure that you are fully invested in your own facility so that you're prepared for those type of inspections.
You're awesome. Great advice. I mean, I fully support all those comments because, I mean, definitely I've seen this often where deca millions are being spilled on facilities and there's not due diligence. Like, there's just like this assumption about the market going to take up the product, and you've really got to invest. And I will say this, it was hard 3 years ago, but progressively there's been good educational pieces that have been coming out. And thank you to you as well for coming on as Wellness Choice to talk about the journey, talk about the considerations, because you're adding to that benchmark. I mean, there's not that many facility videos. There's a couple of them I feature, and I try to do that more to professionalize the industry, to spotlight the fact that Africa is not just this out in the bush vibe. There's definitely markets for that. There's definitely applications for it. Don't get me wrong. We're number 3 on the Interpol list for illicit cannabis export, but we can be producing high quality medicinal standard products, and we certainly are. And that's why I'm glad to have you on. I'm glad to have the corporate video in here to show the world and to show the rest of Africa what is possible when we commit ourselves to a high quality medicinal botanical product. And I thoroughly believe that the next decade for Africa is going to see a lot of African botanicals featuring progressively in the international markets. And I think this is exactly where we're strong and where we should be going. And I know it's been a 3-year journey, but if I look forward now as maybe wrapping up question, we've talked about 3-year journey. Where do you guys see yourselves in the next 3 years? Like, what is the ideal vision, the ideal goal? I mean, that would speak to any partners you're looking to align with your vision. Take us through the next, let's call it 2-year window, maybe more safely. But if you're talking the next 3 years, where do you want to be positioned in the local and global market?
Great. No, thanks a lot, Jeff. So currently we're fortunate enough to still be 100% family-owned business. We don't rely on any debt financing to have got to where we are, which we're very fortunate to be in that position. So going forward, we'd like to grow Wellness Choice organically, streamlining our productivity and our manufacturing flow and maximizing our efficiencies. And then in terms of where you alluded to in terms of partnership, our perfect partnership would be a pharmaceutical company looking to integrate backwards into the supply chain and secure and have a control of the biomass coming into their pharmaceutical company, and come and partner with us, whereby we've got a stable offtake and they've got control over their biomass that they're receiving. And then lastly, which you'll see in our facility video of how closely knit we are with our community. Because of our corporate social responsibility that we touched on earlier, we currently are sponsoring a soccer team in the area with kits, balls, match fees, and all of that. We'd like to create a league in the area with 10 teams, whereby Wellness Choice puts together the prize money every year. And we believe that remote areas of KwaZulu-Natal need this kind of hope, where through employment or through sport, and if there's 10 teams, 20 or 15 players a team, that's 150 individuals that have got something to look forward to week in and week out. And if we can uncover at least one person in a 5-year period who goes and plays in the PSL or any major soccer league around the world, we've really done our job, and we can smile with what we've achieved there.
Excellent.
Yeah, Jeff, and I think just to touch more on the ethical and the social side of our business, we pride ourselves in, we come from a country where many groups are underrepresented, right? And we pride ourselves in look into diversification, inclusion, and transformation. So with that being said, we've prioritized the inclusion of women and the upliftment of women in our community, in our area, by employing our greenhouse staff and starting off just with women. So I think that's something that, that should align with any partner, that the social aspect of a business is prioritized and taken care of as well. So yeah, just, to touch on everything from facility to social to environmental, we've considered all those factors. We've considered the ethical sustainability of the facility and the environmental factors out here as well. So we're watching our footprint really closely, and that is something that we'd hopefully align to any possible partnership.
Awesome, excellent. Well, I'm excited to see the journey going ahead for Wellness Choice. What I'll do as well is I'll put any contact information in the description of the video. So for anyone who's looking to reach out to Wellness Choice, thank you again for sharing the experience. the journey. I think this is exactly what people want to see. They want to better understand the context locally, and we need to all drive together as a community to raise the standard of cannabis and botanicals in the region. And Jenna and Gilbert, thank you once again. And I'm going to take us through now to a video featuring the highlights from Wellness Choice.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having us.
Thanks so
Cheers.
much.
Coming from an agricultural background, we as a family understand that this is not just merely producing a crop of maize or producing beef cattle that we take very, very seriously. We've taken every necessary measure to ensure the consistency, the quality, as well as the safety for our customers. Hi, my name's Gilbert Richmond. I'm the authorized representative of Wellness Choice. It's been an incredible journey, starting in May of 2019. So we're coming on 2.5 years. The facility being so remote, we've identified many positives. How clean our air is, how clean our water is, coming from mountain streams into our holding tanks through our reverse osmosis system. We've got over 60 CCTV cameras on site, ensuring the safety of our customers and the product itself. We've got an advanced biometric system that allows people certain access to certain areas of their responsibility. We've got color-coded uniforms for various areas of the facility, being the processing facility, the cultivation area, as well as the primary processing area. We haven't held back in terms of the facility design. We've put every measure imaginable in place to ensure the consistency, the high quality, as well as the safety of our product. Something that's brought a lot of enjoyment into this build process is lunch break from 1 to 2 is a hotly contested soccer match between the Abafana and the Abakehla. The Richmond family and the community view each other as one family. We live in a very stable community. We've got members of the community coming to thank us for bringing this opportunity to this area, this remote area of KwaZulu-Natal.
Hello everyone, my name is Solomon Chavele. I'm staying here in Matiwane. We thank you for the Richmond family because they're creating a job for everyone here around Matiwane and Lusteni.
Emdenini waka Richmond okusenzela into enhle kakhulu nani nayibona ngapha emva kwami.
Asekho isidingo sokuba sihambe siye Joburg Durban sisiphelela khona la siyosebenzela khona la.
So we appreciate everything because they're gonna create a lot of opportunity for our community. So we thank you for everything because they're gonna be a lot of jobs. So we thank everyone for giving us the opportunity to have a factory like this in our community. You can see on my backside is a factory here where we're gonna work. So thank you for Richmond family. Thank you very much.
sibathande njengoba nathi basithanda. Ngiyabonga.
Sigaba la siyophelela la. Ngiyabonga.
So for us, through this journey, we've realized that it's a lot more than just ourselves. The impact on the community, the job creation, and that for us has become a big driving factor of our passion going into this project or as it's developed.